Run it through this order and see how it go. You're recording, Buzz?
Yeah, the red light is on.
All right. Dan, are you ready, sir?
I've never been ready, and I will never begin to be ready. But let's do it anyway.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another stunningly well put together edition of Third Degree, the podcast. Hi, my name is Peter, and joining me today are my two amigos. First, all the way from Luton, you know him, you love him. His name is Dan Crook. Howdy, Dan.
Hi, Pete. Just want to say I'm calling in from the pit of despair I got stuck in last week while watching Luton Town play, and then watching Unraveled with FC Dallas.
I thought you were going to be sitting in the stands eating a piece of pizza after hitting a hat trick.
No, that only happens against us.
Ah, okay. And then, of course, your hero and mine, you know him, and you love him as well, the editor and founder of ThirdDegree.net, the Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hello, Peter. Today my joke was going to be about going down to my corner bar and drinking away my sorrows, but then I remembered all the bars are closed. So that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, that's not going to help you much. You're going to have to go to the liquor store and take it home with you, Buzz.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, I think this is a safe space. Is this not a safe space? Can I admit something to you guys and you won't judge me?
Far away.
It is Thursday evening, and I've watched maybe 20 minutes of MLS is back so far.
Yeah, it's hard to get motivated about it. I did watch all of the Orlando Inter Miami game because of number one, Oscar Pereira coaching Orlando, of course, and then we have the other Victor Ulloa and Tesha Akindele sort of connections. So I did watch that game. It was the first game, and I was hyped. But then the game this morning, had some other stuff going on, and the game this evening, I watched the first half, and the second half I was on the call with my dad for a little while, and it wasn't enough for me to rearrange schedule. I'm not that interested. I'm only casually interested.
All right, I can count on the good Dan Crook to have totally just bathed his entire existence in every minute of MLS is back so far, right, Dan? We can count on you for that, right? Right?
No. Nah, I watched half of the Orlando game, and then I watched most of the New York Philly game this morning, just really because it timed out with work that I could have the game up on one monitor and work up on another two. I was going to watch the game this evening, but Univision, in their infinite wisdom, put that terrible fake crowd noise, which had a lot of whistling going on, so I resisted the temptation to throw my TV out the window and just turned it off.
All right, so I'm going to guess that it probably doesn't bode well that three guys who spend as much time watching or consuming and thinking about Major League Soccer have not watched a lot of this is not a great deal. And I'm wondering how much of that is a reflection of an overall attitude about the tournament, and how much of that is the fact that our team that we are, pledged our allegiance to is not even in the damn thing.
Well, for me, it's certainly a combination of both. Plus, there's a lot of games coming in a fast window. It's going to be impossible to watch all of them. And definitely with FC Dallas being off, my interest has dropped considerably. But, I'll watch it. I'll casually watch other MLS games from time to time, especially if I see what I think is a really good matchup or an exciting matchup. One funny note about the fake crowd noise today, Dan, is I was listening to the secondary audio program in the English language on Univision, the sport channel there, and when the game started, they didn't have it on, and then a minute in or something, there was this big click pop, and all of a sudden it was loud, and the crowd was loud and drowning out the commentators. They had forgotten to turn it on at the start of the game. It's
oh crap! We forgot the fake crowd noise. Turn it on.
And I literally flipped the sap back and forth just to make sure that I was like, what just happened? Why am I being drowned out by all this crowd noise all of a sudden?
You can totally see some interns scrambling across the room to go press a button or something, or pull up some sort of menu on a computer screen.
You can probably also see someone at MLS emailing them immediately, hey, we agreed not to do this. Can you stop?
Yeah, it's interesting the way they've got it set up. You know, that field they're playing on is adjacent to the arena inside where the NBA will be playing, and then so Dan, I think you told us off before we started recording they're going to have 3 different fields going on.
Yeah. I didn't realize until I think it was Steve Goff put it on Twitter earlier today that there were multiple fields.
Yeah, I think there's a total of 15 fields at the complex. I can't remember if it's 10 or 15. I've been there before. It's really nice. There are 2 fields that are next to each other, which are next to the arena, which have grandstands. They're not big ones. I would say each field couldn't hold more than 500 people. But they're the only ones out of all the fields that have stands with covers on them. And when you're watching this, that's what's behind those blue walls that they keep putting all the advertisements on top of. Is some bench seating underneath cover. And man, boy, MLS has gone out of their way to figure out every particular way to throw in an advertising position in this broadcast. There's like 2 or 3 different walls of advertising, the giant Adidas logo on the middle of the field. And I think I'm right in saying that most every team has 2 different sponsors, one for each sleeve to go along with the main jersey sponsor now too.
And DC United even has the back of their shorts sponsored as well.
Wow.
Somebody
gave me a note that each team gets to include one local sponsor too into the whole overall thing to try and make up for like the lost TV deals.
Did we have any idea what Dallas had in store for their jerseys and shorts or anything? If they had played?
No, I don't.
Advocrap.
Advocaria.
What did you just say, Dan? That was weird.
A big giant
advocrap, and advocrap.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought you were singing like an old coal miner's song or something. I don't know. That was weird. All right. Well, since the last time we did this pod, as anybody who's listening to this is obviously a fan of the club knows, your beloved FC Dallas is not in the tournament. They were removed a couple of days after the last time we did this podcast. They had gotten up to 10 players and a staff member.
Yeah, it was 10 when they were removed. It was 6 when we did the podcast, and then you remember we had to tag it with that extra little piece.
Oh, yeah, I had to cut the prelude.
Basically.
Yeah,
or right afterwards or something.
Yeah, we had recorded earlier, like late afternoon, and then we were getting ready to edit it. Or no, I had finished editing it, and then I had to go back and add the prelude to it because they had announced more players. And so, the plan was, for them to figure out how Dallas was going to participate in this, and then it just got to a breaking point. And what I'm still not clear on, Buzz, is, and I'm not sure anybody's being honest about this. Dan Hunt called into the hardline on the ticket on Tuesday. Corby asked him this question. I've kind of heard it asked in different ways. And what I'm still not clear on is, did the FC Dallas players and or staff say, hey, look, this just isn't fair. We haven't practiced for a week. This is only probably going to get worse. Can we just get out of it? Or did Major League Soccer tell them they couldn't play, or does anybody know how that actually fell out?
Well, in the end, I'm sure the final decision was made by Don Garber and the Hunts. But Lucci today was very adamant that it wasn't about COVID specifically, in the sense of like that they're worried about more people getting in contact because of when they use the protocols and have people isolated. They're saying, everyone's saying it's not a problem. And that and Lucci was very clear, and I've said this before too, that they had plenty of players left. Like last week it was 18. Right now, worst case scenario right now, it's 17. That's still enough to play. So Lucci was very, very adamant that this was about the health of his players in terms of injury, because they can't train, they can't get fit, and they can't be game sharp, and they can't be ready. And basically he said we would not be prepared to play a professional game, and we can't do that and then have guys go out there and blowing knees and rupturing hammies and all this kind of stuff because we're not prepared to play a professional game. So I think the impetus came from FC Dallas. I really do. That they just felt like their inability to train for what would have been 2 weeks leading up to their first game, locked in their rooms, made it impossible for them to conduct their end of a tournament.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle, and it seems very honest and understandable. But when Nashville was pulled out earlier today, the Nashville coach or front office, whoever was making the statement, seemed very adamant that they wanted to play still. But MLS told them, yeah, no, you're up to 9, and it's just going to get worse from here.
Well, there's a difference there. Nashville haven't been on a full team quarantine.
Yeah, they haven't been shut in the hotels for 9 days
Right.
and counting like Dallas has been when they were pulled.
On the call that Dan Hunt had immediately after the news came out, he said on Wednesday, so when those last set of tests came out, that they'd started talking to the league, and that was the discussion. If the team was going to be locked down and couldn't train, then it was just going to be a case of injuries. There wouldn't be the required depth. So he did say the final decision was MLS, but yeah, it definitely sounds like FC Dallas kind of came in with things. Nashville saying that the players still wanted to play. I'm sure the FC Dallas players still wanted to play, but that's why you have a coaching staff and a full technical staff to say, hey, you're good, hey, you're not. Let's not go and blow an Achilles or an ACL
Right.
and ruin the next year of your life.
Yeah, Lucci even mentioned that they've had guys that have been cleared from that list of now 11 players. Some of them are now negative and are back in the regular wing of the hotel. And it's actually more than 17 players available. It's just 17 is the worst case.
And yet they're still all just stuck in their room at this point.
Yeah, but different wings, so not that makes it any better.
Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I do want to go back to one thing that was talked about. Dan has talked about this, and I think Lucci's talked about it. Dan Hunt, that is, that Lucci and the club wanted to get to Orlando as early as possible. And my thinking about that is, I hope nobody's thinking that was a bad decision, because I am of the impression that getting the team isolated into a place like that probably would have reduced the chances of them getting exposed versus whatever the team and the roster players were doing prior to getting on a plane and heading to Orlando. Because it's very clear, I think we're all in agreement, that's where this outbreak within the club started. Wasn't once they got to Orlando, it was all whether it was one person or multiple people were doing in their free time before they got on a plane.
Yeah, when they have the first 2 guys test positive on arrival, and 6 in the first 3 days, that's all pre-exposure. That's all here. So all this would have happened here. It doesn't make a difference if they went early in that sense. We would have the same number of cases.
Yeah, and the other thing... go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, it was definitely an element of timing. We've seen a lot of teams, 3 teams only arrived 2 days ago, that have had an inconclusive or a positive or a false positive in the day, in those that 72-hour period where they have to do 2 tests, and then they've delayed the flights for a few days, retested everyone, and tried to really, we talk about that 5 to 7 day period, and they've tried to really get as much of that as they can. FC Dallas didn't have that. They had the tests from the week before, those 2 tests, Pico and Sylvania. Sylvania was obviously ready to travel. Pico stayed away from the group and never traveled. So, as far as they were concerned, they were good. It's just, it was a little bit unfortunate that other teams, had those inconclusives or false positives or legitimate positives that they could then know to delay travel and not turn isolation into, the old-fashioned chickenpox party.
Well, that is one of the great frustrations about all of this that's not limited to Major League Soccer. Joey Gallo with the Texas Rangers tested positive twice and then tested negative twice, and that all happened within the span of 10 days. And it was 2 different type of tests. The 2 positive tests came from a saliva test that the league was running, and then the negative test came from a nasal swab afterwards. So, and I'm sure this is going on within MLS too, which is false positives and all of this type of stuff. But the other news we did get today, Buzz, that you can help out with is that Dallas did get more positive tests today on Thursday the 9th.
Yeah, over the last 3 days, they've had one more coach and one more player test positive. The player, I'm very, very confident the player was today. The coach was, I believe, was either on the 7th or the 8th. So, that's enough time that we're over a week from when they last trained, which was that Monday when they arrived, the 29th. So, it's possible there's some false positives happening. There's possible there's some cracks in the quarantine. It's hard to really know at this point. It's clear that they're not out of the woods yet. And there definitely is still some troubles, even though, and again, what do we all really know about this thing? I mean, even the guidelines are just guidelines. We're still learning all the time about how this thing is evolving and changing. And we think there's a 7-day wait on when exposure to test, but maybe it can be 9. Maybe, it's clearly they're not out of the woods yet. And the problem with the test today is that I think they have to wait at least a week of negatives before they can travel as a group back, because we originally had heard the 15th, and that was a week after their last round of positive tests back on the 7th, give or take a couple of days ago. So they were supposed to have a week of no, actually the last positive was on the 3rd, now that I think about it. So you're right. I think it's 2 weeks. They were going to be there the 3rd to the 15th. So now these new tests mean they might be there till the 20-something.
I swear in the course of the last 2 days, I've read somewhere two things. One, that they have made the decision that Dallas will only go back to town when they can all go together. And two, that can't happen until 14 days after the last positive person tested positive or negative, whatever it is. Yeah, and man, it just makes you feel terrible for all the guys, but I got to tell you, I feel a really special level of concern and empathy for that half or majority of the squad that have tested negative and didn't, they've done absolutely nothing wrong, and they're literally locked in a hotel room by themselves for all this time, and that's got to be absolutely maddening.
Yeah, there's a phase of your life, most people's lives, I think, where you have to learn how to entertain yourself when you're going to be on your own for some job or for whatever. Most people go through it at some point or another. And these guys, the older guys, I'm sure have by now in their life, but these young guys, some of these guys that are between the age of 16 to 22, some of those guys have never had anything like this probably in their life. So it's going to be a real life test for some of these kids, honestly.
I don't know if you saw, but yesterday they were allowed to go for a jog as a team, just to be out of their rooms for the first time in over a week. And then today they were allowed to just, have an actual walk and some true leisure time. And, they look like little kids in a candy shop, especially Cobra, because Cobra is, is everyone's spirit animal and a kid in a candy shop.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the video, and a lot of the social media they've been putting out of late has been pretty anywhere from a real bummer to pretty hilarious. And again, you feel bad for all those guys because all of this work and effort they put in to get to this point, only to get there and have to sit and watch everybody else get to play, is kind of a bummer. Now, we also mentioned that Nashville got up to 9 people tested positive. They were removed from the tournament today, and kind of in a weird twist, that actually fixed a problem for the league, because it's hard to have a bracket with 25 teams, but it's wicked easy when you got 24, which is where they're at now. So through no fault of their own, poor Chicago now has to trash all of their plans, tactical and otherwise, for the teams they had been planning on playing for the last however long, and now are in Dallas's position and now have to have 5 days to figure out how they're going to handle Seattle, a team that they never planned on playing anytime soon. So no matter what Major League Soccer decided to do in terms of handling the scheduling and the rescheduling of the bracket, somebody was going to be upset, and unfortunately for Chicago, that fell to their feet.
Yeah, it's unfortunate they didn't make the decision on Nashville one day earlier. Then they could have drawn lots to see who moved. But now that group's all played games except for Chicago, so there was no choice. I mean, it's the only choice available of a bunch of bad choices. So it's they had to do what they had to do.
Yeah, I thought maybe if the league had just said before the tournament started, hey, look, if any team has to be removed from the tournament due to COVID, then any team they were scheduled to play against is just automatically a win. I think that would have made the most sense. Now, certainly in Dallas's group's case, that would have been one of two problems. The teams that were in the group were like, well, now we only get 2 games, or the teams in that group that only played 2 games advanced into the knockout rounds, and their opponents were bitching, well, now we're having to play a team that's only played 2 games.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
There was no really good, clean way to do it. Maybe this is the best. I don't know. Everybody will have a reason to bitch one way or the other. I want to make sure everybody understands, at least from my standpoint. I don't know how you guys feel about this. I am really rooting for this to work. I tend to fall on the side of the ledger that we need to get things restarted in this country to a degree, along with all of the safety protocols and making sure we're doing it in the smartest way. So I was very much for Major League Soccer figuring this out and making it work. But I got to tell you, some of the decision making that has taken place, and it's easy for me to criticize sitting here in my chair talking, into my computer, without the vast amount of all the things that went into this. There are certain aspects to how this tournament has been put together that I just scratch my head and go, why are they doing it this way? Like, why could they not figure out how to fix this? And I'm not sure if it's just somebody in the front office's fault or if the blame literally does lie across all equal parts, the Players Association, the league, the teams, and the ownership.
Yeah, for me, I think the only thing you could have done was to have everybody come in and lock down everybody for 2 full weeks complete lockdown of everybody. But, the players didn't want that. The coaching staff didn't want that. They wanted to be able to train. They wanted to be with their families. And I totally get that. But that means everyone was exposed. So the only way you could have pulled it off flawlessly would have been a complete arrival and a complete lockdown for 2 weeks for everybody, which would have, of course, made for bad soccer. You would have had 2 or 3 weeks of training. And so now all of a sudden players are in Orlando for over a month before they even play their first game. So expenses, family time away, I can see why it didn't happen that way.
Yeah, asking players and coaches to be away from the families for, the original proposal was 10 weeks. That's excessive.
Okay, but wait a second. Is it excessive? The NBA's locked up in Orlando for like 3 months.
I mean, they're getting paid significantly more than MLS players. Yeah.
Well, 10 weeks
Okay.
is 2.5.
Say that again?
10 weeks is 2.5 months. That's close to 3 months. Would have been similar.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I like
The problem you've also got is, when you look a step deeper, the players don't necessarily want to have this tournament, but
they want to get paid.
They need to get paid. I mean, you think most MLS players don't earn a crazy amount of money. They may be on like the low 6 figures, as tons that are, in 5 figures. They're not. They need to earn a wage. They need to support their families still. They are, in terms of professional major sporting competitions, the closest thing to the average person.
Yeah, there are just so many aspects of this, and the players not trying to make this tournament as short as possible, and the ownership, their liability and all of this. At the end of the day, I don't think any one particular group is to blame. I think it all just gets laid out evenly and smoothly across the whole lot of them, and we end up getting what we're getting, and hopefully it works out and they don't have to remove another team. I guess time will tell about that. One of the real frustrating and almost maddening aspects to this has been the really unfortunate spate of negative press, and we'll just use Dallas as the most obvious example because it really started happening today, where players themselves are coming out on social media and calling out media members for speculating about how things happened or blame. I think it started this morning with Jimmy Maurer pointing a finger specifically at Taylor Twellman, and then several other players spoke up, and then Taylor Twellman had to put his tail between his legs and kind of put a mea culpa up on Twitter. One of you guys kind of explain the history behind that for us.
Well, sure. There was sort of a narrative developing from various sources of some of not very good repute, but then often repeated up to the point where Taylor Twellman was saying something this morning about the narrative being that Dallas players had somehow been irresponsible, that they had been going out when they shouldn't or doing things they shouldn't, and it's by no means definitive, but I've checked with all the people that I know that are willing to give me info, and I'm not getting any information that is indeed the case. I'm not hearing about parties or guys going out to bars or fingers being pointed. I'm not hearing any of that. Again, that's not definitive, but I definitely don't feel like there's some irresponsibleness from individual players. There's just sometimes things go wrong in terms of the overall protocols. And the one we can point our finger out to the most obviously is the fact that when they arrived on Saturday, whatever that was, the 27th, I think, they tested players. But because there's a delay of a whole day till you get results, they trained the next day in the morning. And one of the players that popped that first day trained in that session. He's clearly visible in the B-roll of that session. And then they get a positive result. Now, we also know there's an incubation period. So, for two players to test positive that first day, that means that they had been exposed and were exposing the team for anywhere from 5 to 7 days. So, it's
long
not
before
like,
they got on a plane to go to Orlando.
Yeah, way before they got on a plane to go to Orlando. So it's not like, the breakdowns in these protocols and the things that are going wrong, it's not like Dallas players are different than other players around the United States. These guys are all the same. It's not like Dallas lacks discipline or has irresponsible players. So that's what Jimmy Maurer was clapping back about on Taylor, and some other people echoed the same thing, was, you're being ridiculous. We didn't do anything different than anybody else. We followed the protocols just as they are supposed to be. And Lucci was adamant about that today and defended his guys on the radio. That's
the thing as well. Like, we're very clear in saying about the incubation period and stuff like that. That's our responsibility to, present it fairly. When you got guys like Twellman, they kind of overlook that. So you've got this whole crowd of people that think the guys that tested when they got off the plane, they got COVID on the plane. The guy that tested the next day got it the next day. That it's this immediate thing, and it isn't. It's a virus. It's not. It's not someone spat on your face and there's saliva coming down your cheek. It's not. It's something that takes time and has that. I know the minimum is 2 days, but still, you're looking 5 to 7 days, extreme cases 14. So, people then in turn go, oh, well, they obviously went out, and then you get this whole rumor that they went out to 2 bars, and one of them isn't even in Orlando. That's just some idiot on Twitter trying to get, somehow relevant, and it all boils down from there. And then there was another thing about a going away party. The only going away party they had was the supporters send off, which half the teams in the league did the same thing. And trust me, there was nobody got within 6 feet of anyone because I was there. It was all very above board and regulated. So it's kind of like the whole fake news thing, right? Just leaving out certain details to spread disinformation.
Well, just let me say this. I've been in the broadcasting business for a long time, and I appreciate the fact that Taylor Twellman is trying to convert himself from athlete to broadcaster, and he's very green and he's very new at this. But at this point, I consider him to be a broadcasting house of cards. He has consistently over the last few years run fast and loose with the information that he gathers. He sometimes tends to pass it off as his own insight or genius. He did this to me specifically a couple of years ago, where he took something I put out and then reused it as his own. And when I called him out on it, his response was to block me on Twitter. So, hearing what he did today does not surprise me, and I'm hoping somebody at ESPN is paying attention because, too much more of this is going to end up costing people, and not just him, because I think he's got a lot of promise, and I think he could be really good at this, but he's got some journalistic ethics stuff that somebody needs to grab him by the shoulder and teach him some things, because this is not the first and it's not the fifth. There's been multiple times where Taylor's been caught in this weird thing where he says something on television and it kind of blows up in his face, and today was a perfect example of that. And I also want to say his kind of like mea culpa that he posted on Twitter was total crap and bullshit unto itself. It wasn't even like a real apology. It was like, oh, Jimmy and I got together and had a conversation and he's a real good guy. And but if you were reading between the lines, it was like, oh, crap, another player called me out and I realized I shouldn't have said what I said. And so here's my somewhat apology for it without me actually apologizing, which probably says more about Taylor Twellman than anything else I just said about him.
Yeah, he definitely didn't back off of his irresponsible players. I mean, he did say that he felt bad for everybody. I'm just not buying this irresponsible players garbage. I think people around this team are doing everything they can, following all the league protocols to be involved in play. These guys wanted to play so badly. I don't think they would have been doing anything reckless. And none of my sources are saying they were, for what that's worth.
Well, no, and we all know that it only takes one person, right? And I think if we go back and think about the timeline of what's happened with this club, we all know there was originally one person way back on June the 3rd that tested positive. Now, what we don't know is, was that the original domino, or did he test positive, they got him away from everybody, and everything was clean for another couple of weeks, and then somebody else got tested positive and passed it around to the other 9 people who eventually ended up testing positive in Florida, up until the point they got removed from the tournament. And again, that could be a teammate, it could be a coaching member, it could have been, somebody that worked it could have been a janitor that was working at the stadium. It could have been anything. So who knows how this happened?
That was definitely something that Lucci brought up on the radio show. He was talking about, these are guys that live in multi-generational homes. They all have families that, they can be as professional and as careful as they want. But, it's a virus that you can put your hand on the wrong surface, touch your face, and then, a couple of days later, they can't unfortunately control everything. The only way they could have really is having like an in-market quarantine, which, the league did want to do. They wanted to have a week. The players' union rejected it. I guess for the insinuation that, hey, we can be responsible ourselves and we'd still like to be around our families. And, there's nothing, like Buzzer, there's nothing to say they haven't been responsible.
Yeah, it would have taken a 2-week complete lockdown to solve it, solve it completely. And
right.
There was a 2-week gap between that first test and when the next guys tested. So it's probably not likely that it was from the original one. But again, who are we to know, really? A lot of this was still, we're reaching for reasons and trying to logically put things together in our own minds as well as anything. But I don't buy the irresponsible player argument. I just don't. I think they follow all the protocols.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about Lucci, because we've seen and heard a lot from him lately. He's been kind of making the rounds on doing some video conferencing. He had his own radio show again, and I think I don't know if I said this on the last pod or not, but every time I see him, I'm reminded of that time that time with Oscar Pereira in the days after Fabian Castillo went AWOL, where he was so clearly dejected and defeated and frustrated and mad, and that's the exact same vibe I'm getting from Lucci in any of these interviews I've seen lately.
Yeah, a week ago he was dejected, and then midway through the week he was starting to get a little fired up, and he got really passionate when somebody asked him about, various reports that were being out there, and then today he was really defensive of his team and his players, and really emotional about how much they wanted to play and what an opportunity they're missing, and how they're going to try and use this situation now is a test and a chance for them to become mentally tough and resilient and try and build from it and try and use it. So he's a good leader, I think, Lucci. I wanted to mention in this podcast somewhere that, some among the people I talk to, I hear stuff from various sort of sources. And one of the things I've heard this week was that both for a lot of credit and praise for Luchi Gonzalez and for Andre Zanata, that both had been really responsive to the players and really responsive to families and really responsive to loved ones, and doing a lot of communicating and a lot of leading and really trying to rally the troops down in Orlando and really trying to keep the team together and keep everybody positive. So, a roundabout way, I'm not there, but I'm hearing really good things about the leadership of this club, not the ownership, the leadership. And I wanted to give those guys a little bit of credit today.
One of the things that I think has never been really been cleared up, and Dan Hunt called into the hard line on the ticket on Tuesday, and Corby asked him this question. Just for clarity, I told Corby to ask the question. Is the following, which was, could anybody definitively define if FC Dallas just said, "Hey, look, can we get out of this because we haven't practiced? We don't want to put people in danger of getting injured, and the odds are we're just going to have more positive tests moving forward." Or did Major League Soccer, by and large, or did Dallas say, no, we want to play when we want to play, and Major League Soccer said, no, you're not going to play, and pulled him out of the tournament? And that when Dan got that question, he kind of danced around it and really put the blame, not the blame. He said it was really Major League Soccer's decision, but based on what I'm hearing and what I've heard you guys say, there was a lot of kind of there was kind of an attitude within the club and the players and the coaching staff that, like, look, at this point, it would not be fair or safe for us to go and try to play in a soccer tournament.
Yeah, Lucci was very clear about that today. I mean, I've said before that I'm pretty sure the ultimate decision was made with the Hunts and Don Garber, but there definitely was a push from FC Dallas and its staff in the sense that, and I don't mean the players, I mean the staff, that at this point they've been in lockdown in their rooms for over a week, and it would have been 2 weeks by the time they played. And so you're talking about, and Lucci was very clear about this today, he said, when we say we're worried about the health and safety of our players, we don't mean like this COVID testing. We mean on the field health and fitness, because if we sit in hotel rooms for 2 weeks and then tried to play a professional game, we're not going to be prepared for that game. We're not going to be prepared in fitness. We're not going to be prepared in sharpness. We're not going to be able to run our systems, and guys are going to get hurt. You're going to see blown ACLs. You're going to see torn hamstrings. It would be irresponsible for us to try and play after sitting in hotel rooms for 2 weeks and not being able to train. So that was why Lucci says they pushed to be out from his perspective. Now, were there other factors? I'm sure there were many, but it was interesting to see him clarify that today on the radio.
Yeah, and that just echoed what Dan Hunt had said on the call immediately after, they were withdrawn. And like on the ticket, he kind of danced around and kind of put it on MLS overall as the final decision, but it's like a player coming back from injury, right? They train, they kind of build up to play in a game. They may sub into games. They don't, if you're sitting around for 10 days, you can't run. You go out and try and play 90 minutes, you can guarantee your hamstrings going, an ACL, something. Those fast twitch fibers kind of need bringing to life. It's not something that you can just do in a day or two. So, I guess when you look at it, they get to make up the 3 games, because, God forbid something like Hara or Cobra blow an ACL and they're out for the season. That does a whole lot more damage than sitting out this tournament.
Yeah, and again, that's probably the one weird thread that's hanging out there that's nobody really quite understands, is how they're going to handle Dallas and Nashville being out of the tournament, since the games in the group stage was supposed to count towards the final standings, and in theory, regular play in home stadiums is going to pick back up somewhere, in August or September. I to be honest with you, I have no idea how the league handles that change in all of this, because you can't ask, because now that you've got 2 teams out, it's not like Dallas could just go back and play Seattle and San Jose and who was the third team? I forgot. Vancouver at some later date, because now those teams all have Chicago as an opponent. So, and then it also seems even more janky to have Dallas and Nashville play each other 3 times sometime in the near future. So
that's what'll happen.
Is that what's going to happen?
I mean, if you want to talk about some kind of balanced schedule, that's the games that are being. Listen, honestly, the whole back end of the season is still up in the air. If they can't pull off this tournament, there's not going to be any home games after that. It's like what the schedule looks like and how they manage to put the schedule together is going to depend largely on how successful this tournament is in terms of being able to play games and having people not get sick.
Yeah, I always thought the idea of the tournament was really secretly genius, because it's almost like that season of television where the writers say, you know what, we're gonna finish off this particular season. We're gonna write it so that if they cancel us, at least it looks like we finished the story.
And you get a team into the CONCACAF Champions League.
Right. And so if they had gotten through the tournament and they found somebody to win MLS back the tournament championship, you could make them the champion and not finish out and not play another game, right?
Yeah, sure.
You could figure that you could figure out how that would work. And now that's potentially what could happen just without 2 of their teams in the tournament, which would be, real bummer. But if they do continue to go forward and play games after the tournament in home stadiums, I'm really confused how they sort out the rest of the fact that they've got 2 teams arguably with 3 games in hand, and who they're going to play or how they're going to do it. And it does make me wonder, maybe they take Nashville and Dallas and say, all right, you 2 are going to play each other 3 times over the course of, 2 weeks, and we're going to make you go play it in Montana or someplace where the COVID thing's really low and there's 1 field they can play at and 2 decent hotels.
Well, they're definitely not going to do that, because they've already said Nashville will be an Eastern Conference team for the remainder of the year, and there won't be any intra-conference games. So likewise, now Chicago is a Western Conference team for the rest of 2020.
I thought they said Chicago was an Eastern team still.
No, they changed it, so they're now Western Conference.
Wow. Oh, Brimstone Cup. Play Chicago more.
Listen to Buzz per cup.
Squirrel! Brimstone Cup. Play Chicago 10 times.
Yeah, so I don't know. I have no concept of how this is all going to play out. And I know everybody's doing the best they can and with limited resources and all of those things. But man, it's just it's so weird to see this all happen in unprecedented times, as they say. Okay, so I guess we've all decided that maybe our interest in MLS is back as a tournament is now watered down a little bit because FC Dallas is out of it. I guess we'll watch a few of the games here and there and continue to keep up at it. But for those of you, since the both of you watched a little bit of either, has anything really caught your eye? Has the quality of the game been better or worse than you anticipated?
I think it's. I want to say it's worse, but I don't think it is worse. I think it's pretty much what I anticipated. It's not great. It reminds me of late '90s, early '00s MLS. I think MLS has progressed past that now. The biggest complaints I had were touches were a little loose. Maybe guys are a split second late getting the ball out from under their feet and moving. Particularly with Orlando's team, I was like, "Well, Poppy's gonna be all over that." But it's not terrible. As somebody said to me, this was a bad game of soccer, and I'm like, yeah, but it's pro soccer. It's like I'll take it. I need it, so I'll be watching some of it. Not all of it, but more of it.
It just looks like preseason football.
Yeah, it does. That's a good analogy. It does look like preseason football.
Well, and we were going back and forth about this on Twitter. Those morning games, the humidity in Florida, I can't press upon anybody that's never lived in Florida just how absolutely soul-sucking the weather can be. And it's weird because you'd think at 4 in the afternoon is the worst part of the day. It's not. It's first thing in the morning up until about 11:30. The humidity and the dew point in Florida is so off the charts. It's like running in and breathing invisible pudding. It's the worst.
Let's narrow that down, because a lot of people go to like Miami or somewhere like that where it's comparatively arid compared to to Orlando, where you
Yes.
are constantly just surrounded by cloud.
Yeah, no, you're right. There are different parts of Florida, but specifically in Orlando and Central Florida and that stuff, it is oppressive.
It's like Houston.
It's Houston times 3, though, dude.
I'm with you.
It's really bad. I said this on Twitter. I would rather play in Frisco on any 100-degree day versus a Tuesday morning in Orlando when it's 90 degrees and 77 a dew point of 77 degrees. It's just awful. And I was thinking about that game this morning, and I saw I guess somebody went down in kind of an exhaustion during a water break, and he just looked totally spent at that first water break. And then, of course, I thought about Edwin Giossi at the same time too, because that's exactly what happened to that dude when he started that game in Orlando a couple of years ago. Is that he got 20 minutes or 30 minutes into that game in Orlando, and that cat was toast.
Yeah, he said, "Screw this, I'm done. Set now."
Oh, my leg hurts. I'm out.
Yeah.
And while I was mad at him at the time, I totally understood where he was coming from.
Yeah, he's like that 8-year-old that just sits down and starts picking flowers in the middle of the game. That one. Yeah.
Okay, well, anything else about this that we need to get into, either related on the tournament level, the league level, or specifically with Dallas that we haven't talked about, just specific to the tournament at this point that anybody wants to touch on?
I don't think I have anything else other than I just wanted to reiterate that they had plenty of players left available. Lucci said today that they had guys that have been cleared to go back to the regular group. They're still in quarantine, but they're back with the normal group, so they've sort of recovered.
So somebody that tested positive now tested negative,
now negative.
And could have been available.
So
right. Okay.
Worst case scenario, if everyone that's been positive is out, they still have 17 players. And Lucci even said they've gotten some back. So it's not a question of bodies. They could have gotten it done on that in that regard, but. It's not that, and I think it's important to understand that it's not like they didn't withdraw because they couldn't field a team. No, they could easily field a team and field a pretty damn good team because there's only like 3 starters so far that got hit, not including the goalkeeper, which makes 4.
Yeah. By the way, has there been any update on Jesse? Has anybody heard anything about Jesse's status?
0. As far as I know, he's still in the rehab program. Heard nothing.
And we don't know how long that's scheduled to last or anything like that?
I mean, my assumption is it's like any other kind of rehab program. It's as long as it needs to. No. I don't know.
And the other question that came out of all of this that dawned on me when we were realizing that Dallas wasn't going to play again and we have no real concept of when they may play their next game. I mean, I guess we could safely say it's going to be sometime in mid-August at the earliest. Is it possible that we are facing a scenario where we will never see Reggie Cannon play for FC Dallas again?
Very, very possible. The next window opens up in mid-August, and that's for the teams that are going to go into their new European seasons. They're starting up like just a couple of weeks after they finish, I'm pretty sure. So they're going to move quick once those windows open. Now they're not exactly the same as the MLS, and the window that matters is the incoming window. So, it's not the MLS outgoing window that matters. There is no such thing. It's only incoming windows. So the minute that all those European windows open up, which is going to be, as we say, mid-August because they're starting at the end of August, right? So I think that he's gone. I hear about multiple teams interested from Germany. I've mentioned a couple of them on Twitter. If I remember correctly, it's Stuttgart and Freiburg were the 2 that I've seen mentioned. And then someone has mentioned Anderlecht, which I think is Belgium. And somebody else mentioned Portugal, and I can't add any validity to those. But that's
the
enough.
Entire country of Portugal is
no,
interested
teams
in
in Portugal. I abbreviated it. Just, no, Portugal.
Yeah, they want him to slot in behind Cristiano Ronaldo on the right.
Yeah, they're swap for Nani.
I didn't know national teams could recruit players that way. That's a new twist.
Thomas Dooley says you can. So does David Reggie. That's an old school reference for you.
Boy, those old school references.
Yeah. But back onto Reggie. I mean, he wants to go. I have found out some sort of vague numbers on his contract. His one right now is, the MLS players, leak it eventually. So I can just comfortably tell you that it's around 120 now, 120K, but next year it explodes up to like 500-ish territory. So you can see what we meant about an incentive-laden contract for the team to get rid of him. I mean,
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
I just want to point out, we're talking about $120,000 blowing up, to use Buzz's phrase, to
Yeah.
$500,000. And this week, Pat Mahomes signed a deal for literally over $500 million over the course of.
well, context. This is an FC
I know.
Dallas show. We're talking about
I
FC
know,
Dallas.
I know.
So
It's
that's
just funny.
that's Paxton Jesus territory, which is fine for Reggie, except that you're talking about a right back, and so in the budgetary ways you build MLS franchises, right backs don't get paid that kind of money. So you can see what we always said about it being an incentive-laden contract in order for the club to move him. So there's no question this summer is when he's going. It's just a question of which team and when it's going to happen. And so I actually agree with you, Peter, when you first proposed this question, that yes, I think we've seen the last game Reggie Cannon will play for FC Dallas.
Man, that's a bummer.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he makes it through the winter, but I don't think so. I mean, this is when you go, right? Was when the
Right,
European
yeah.
seasons are starting up, so.
Well, there's also a long window. It looks like it opens July 26th, and UEFA is trying to have every country close on October 5th.
Yeah, but
So,
they'll want him
well,
before the season starts, you would think, right? So
Depends. I mean, depends.
They don't want
where-
him hurt and all that stuff.
It depends, how the seasons get pushed in Europe, how late they go, and that closure is typically lined up with continental competition. So, you got to think that the UEFA themselves are trying to push leagues and their own competitions back a little if that's the date they're putting.
Well, then we should say it this way. If there's a chance that Reggie will play for the club again, you better get your ass out to the stadium to watch him, because it's not going to be that many more times you're going to get to watch him if you get to ever see him in a Dallas shirt again.
yeah,
So just put a pin in that and keep that in mind as we get into August in the transfer window. Okay, then moving back here into the Dallas area, and the USL team, North Texas, is supposed to start on July the 18th, but there's some news on that as well.
well, it's not news. It's just some rumors floating around that that Dallas North Texas Soccer Club may start a few weeks later. Just because, and have a couple of buys at the front, maybe just because. And the rumors could just be people conjecturing for all I know, conjecturing for all I know, based on the COVID situation in Texas. I mean, do teams want to come down here and play a game? So, the USL is going to kick off, and maybe North Texas will go on the road a little bit early. The one fun thing for us, of course, being gigantic kit nerds, is that the North Texas Soccer Club is getting a new home jersey this year. It'll still be predominantly red. They're going to keep the same white road jerseys, because the idea is that they're going to be on the same loop as the first team, which has a new one this year, first for primary, and has a new secondary next year. So that's fun for us kit nerds. I can't wait to see what they do, see if hopefully something good. And hopefully that team gets going pretty quick. There are some questions about how much intermingling was going on with FC Dallas and North Texas. From the pictures and the B-roll that FC Dallas has made available, there's not been any. Like, I've not seen any FC Dallas players popping up, or North Texas the other way, in each other's training since the COVID thing started. That crossover has been ground to a halt. Now, North Texas SC has used academy players. I know of Seth Wilson, Antonio Carrera, and Justin Che are three examples of players I know that have played and trained with North Texas during the summer. So, but no FC Dallas crossover that I know of.
Okay.
I think the big problem you've got is, FC Dallas comes back and suddenly Thomas Roberts, Dante Seeley, all those guys, resume their loans, and then you have got a crossover afterwards. Unless USL protocols have something built in, because theirs were incredibly vague.
Well, by the time they leave Orlando, they're going to be in lockdown for 2 weeks, and so they should be fine, theoretically.
Buzz, I'm glad you brought this up, and this kind of ties into me throwing in the news about the Patrick Mahomes contract, which was you tweeted something a couple of days ago as a reaction to the news that, and you weren't specific as to what team this was or what player it was, and I'm wondering if it was maybe the idea that somebody's going to try to chase Messi or something for a Major League Soccer team. But you essentially were saying that you were hearing that some Major League Soccer team was talking about paying some player, $10+ million a year or something like that. Not as a transfer fee, but as an actual salary.
Yeah.
And you're here we are, following around the Hunt family, which, we have to be honest, this is a really weird week for the Hunt family because not only did they have to take their Major League Soccer team out of the tournament and essentially, put them in mothballs for several weeks, literally within the same 24 hours, they just signed the most expensive contract in global sports history. Like nobody's ever paid an athlete this much money before, ever. And of all people, it was the Hunt family that did that. And it's just really, really hard to juxtapose all of those realities into the one and into the fact that this is actually the same, in many ways, the same thing, or maybe it's not the same thing. Maybe it's two very different things.
Yeah, that was in the Inter Miami Orlando City broadcast. They were talking about Inter Miami missing positions in the field and the kind of players they've been going after. And they listed a couple of names, and one of the names said that person was asking for somewhere in the neighborhood of $13 to $14 million per season. Now, I can't talk about the validity of said story. All I know was, like, when I'm sitting there listening to that story, I cried a little on the inside because we know the Hunts are never paying that kind of money for soccer. And you're right. It was the exact same time that they agreed to pay Mahomes $40 million a year for 12 years, So there's plenty of money there. Obviously, the Chiefs generate revenue far, far beyond FC Dallas. And the joke was that Mahomes will easily be able to buy FC Dallas if he wants to with that contract. But it is, on one level, I do appreciate that the Hunts have chosen to not run FC Dallas at a deficit, to not lose crazy, crazy, crazy amounts of money. I get that. It's their money and it's their business. Do I wish they would play at a deeper part of the pool? Oh yeah, for sure. Now, I don't expect them to go $13 million a season. That wasn't my point, but it'd be nice to see, one or two would be. I mean, we've only seen one happen once or twice at all, right? So, I mean, 2 would be great, 5 would be great. Imagine what Oscar would have done if you'd have bought a $5 million striker and slapped him in the middle of that line.
Oh, they would have won MLS Cup in 2016.
They would have won it 3 or 4 times, you know.
But let me ask you a question: If you could say, and we'll just kind of figure this out. We'll say, is it Toronto has the biggest, total number, and Atlanta's probably somewhere in there. Yeah. And there are 2 parts to this, right? It's not just the amount of your salary wage budget; it's also what you're willing to pay in transfer fees. And maybe the transfer fees is a bigger issue in this than the salary. I don't know. But if you were to kind of tier all the teams out and you consider Dallas to be somewhere right in the middle now, what team, Buzz or Dan, would you most, and we'll start with Buzz, which one would you say, all right, if you could at least get Dan and Clark to get to this team's level of spending, I'd be happy and I would stop bitching about it?
If you could get me to like the Portland, Seattle reign, I don't need to be LAFC or Atlanta or...
Well, Portland and Seattle, there's a pretty big gap between Portland and Seattle.
Yeah, but if you get me in that gap, if you can go out and get some Diego Valeries, go out and get me a Rui Diaz. I mean, I might be pretty happy with some of that, I mean, and maybe that's what Franco Jara is. Maybe we're about to see that. That'd be pretty exciting.
Right.
No transfer fee,
Dan?
But,
pays off when you're part of the Illuminati and the COVID pandemic's going to happen and the economy's going to crash.
Give me Funes Mori, I'll be happy.
All right. What about you, Dano?
I mean, really just...
Were you napping? Did I just wake you up out of a tender slumber?
No.
Oh, okay. You sound like you woke up.
He was thinking.
I was deep in thought. I was I was trying to pull up one of Steve Fenn's salary visualizations, but for some reason I pulled up.
Those are so awesome. I love those
Oh my
things.
God.
I could look at those all day. I don't know how he does that. Those are so
I
part and
accidentally pulled up 2013, so I was like, why is Robbie Keane on this?
cool. Hell, you'd take Robbie Keane, wouldn't you?
Still at 40 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, top third would be great. Just one of those, like Portland. Portland's a perfect example of a team that can bring in a difference maker when they need to. Whether it's Blanca or just when let's say they nearly lost Valeri. He re-signed the deal in the end, but they knew they had the money that if they needed to, they could go out and bring in their next playmaker. FC Dallas, it's Paxton or Jesus or someone significant's gone. Guess we'll just sit around for a couple of years.
Pablo
Hope we grow
Arangues is
one.
available.
Oh my God, please.
And
stop
he'll
it.
still be available.
Sorry.
He's not that good, Buzz.
No, he's not. I know he's not. I just like to tease you.
Hey, he had an amazing 20 minutes once. He didn't produce a key pass or anything useful, but an amazing 20 minutes.
Stop it. Ugh, you make me angry.
I know.
All right. Well, I just wondered how you felt about that, because I do think that is one great oddity of this last 7 or 10 days is all of us kind of kicking our feet in the sand and moping about our ownership group when the same. And again, to be fair, the group that runs the Kansas City Chiefs is not the same group of people necessarily that run FC. I mean, it's the same family, but they're two different organizations now. Dan and Clark own FC Dallas, and it's not the same structure that operates the Chiefs, as I understand it. I think I'm correct in saying that, and I apologize if I've misstated that. But
You're correct.
it is two very different businesses and two very different bank accounts and all of that stuff. It is pretty crazy, that's for sure.
And one actually makes money.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, that there are two different ways to look at that giant contract, and there is certainly a bunch of people that think Pat Mahomes just walked away with the best contract ever, and there's a lot of people out there that make the case that the Hunt family just pulled off one of the greatest contract coups ever, and that this contract actually favors them, and Pat Mahomes did them a favor in many ways, in the way that they structured this deal. So. I don't know enough about it to really say definitively, but by all accounts, both sides are very, very happy with that deal, and kudos to them. I hope it works out, because that's a really good kid they just signed for a lot of money for a very long time, and he's obviously already won a Super Bowl. So, that's a cool story all the way around, and I'm happy for everybody involved.
Yeah. My thought when I saw his contract was, I wonder if he'd wear some FC Dallas gear if you gave it to him.
Well, there is some bad news on that contract. He is prohibited from doing pretty much any physical activity other than, for the Chiefs. So he won't be taking a halftime penalty kick at Toyota Stadium anytime soon.
Well, I wonder if they freaked out, because somebody on the ticket was saying that the other day, or no, maybe you know what it was? Dan told this story when he called in. He said that there were some kids holding a basketball camp in the Kansas City area, and he showed up and shot baskets with them. And it was like 5 days after he had signed his deal or something like that.
Well, Dan, didn't they open the Dan Hunt press conference this week with a no Chiefs questions rule?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very specifically.
Yeah.
And all the local mainstream guys were like, crap, and signed out.
Yeah, there was zero chance I was going to get Dan Hunt booked on the hard line, and Corby was not going to ask him questions about Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs. So it didn't go said or anything like that. It wasn't asked that we wouldn't, but there was zero chance. It was a bit of a trade-off. We'll talk a little FC Dallas, but you gotta be willing to talk a little Kansas City Chiefs and Super Bowl stuff with us too. And Dan was great. He was very nice to do it. He actually told a very, very funny story that I'll share here. Corby and the guys in the show are fascinated by the Hunt family bunker that exists at Arrowhead. I don't know if you guys know about this, but there's
the apartment on top of the stadium.
Yeah, there's an apartment that the Hunts, they essentially live in it, in football season. And Dan was talking about the fact that one of the cool things that he grew up getting to do was after a game that night, they, long after everybody's left, they all go out and they play football on the Arrowhead field as a family and, friends and stuff. And he said they were doing it last year and there was a, quote, major injury on the field. And it turned out to be some friend of his, and we were like, well, how did he get hurt? And this is awesome. He was trying to kick a field goal that was equal to his age, and he blew his knee out. Not Dan, this friend. Mm-hmm. And trying to kick a field goal at Arrowhead that was equal to his age. Now, I don't know how you blow your knee out trying to kick a field goal, but the guy did, and it was a pretty funny story the way Dan told it. So, I guess, yeah, maybe. Or maybe you plant, when you land or something. I don't know, but it was I guess, believe it or not, Dan told it better than I did. So kudos to him. All right.
Have I ever told my Corby Davidson story on this podcast?
No, what's your Corby Davidson story?
Well, it's not a particularly specific story, just that he and I went to the same elementary school and we were on the same Little League baseball team together. That's all.
Did you like wipe him out at first base or anything?
Oh no,
like that?
He was good and I'm terrible. So yeah, he did all the good things and was a good fielder and good hitter, and I was awful. So.
Goofy Corby.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Oh, and Buzz, you had one more thing you wanted to throw out there. You were tweeting today that there's somebody in the academy that's getting some interest overseas.
Yeah, Seth Wilson, who's the U19 goalkeeper, or he was up until a month ago. He's now graduated. He is previously committed to Clemson, but he went to Austria, Wien or however you pronounce that, the Austrian club. He went over there for a little trial. Huh?
Wien.
There you go, Austria Wien. And a little trial earlier, pre-COVID lockdowns, and now Real Betis, however you want to pronounce that, they're sending over a first-team goalkeeper coach is coming here to work with him for 5 days on an extended 5-day training tryout. So that's a significant level of interest. But I wanted to bring it up, number one, to talk about Seth Wilson, who I have admired for a couple of seasons now, and I think is obviously a future pro. But he underlines, this interest underlines for me, again, the one failure in the FC Dallas current system, which is overall phenomenal, their academy to first team system. And that's the tier right below your homegrown Seth Wilsons, your homegrown Tanner Tessmans. They're getting the very best guys who are ready for MLS at 18. And then they're getting what I would call the tier 3 guys, which are the dudes that are pretty good and maybe have a shot to be a pro, but college isn't right for them either. They're getting those guys. But the ones they're missing, there's been like 5 of them this year that are guys that are not ready right this minute for Major League Soccer, but they're way too good to be wasting their time in college. And that's Seth Wilson, Kevin Bonilla, Nico Carrera. It's Jonathan Gonzalez. It's probably Jonathan Gomez and Johan Gomez. There's a chunk of like 5 guys that just came out of the academy that have zero interest in a North Texas contract, because even though college is not right for them, it's still better than a free ride. A free scholarship is better than a $20,000 North Texas contract. So they're not interested. And so FC Dallas is missing out on these guys who can't help them this minute, but they're the dudes who could be 10, 15-year professionals in Major League Soccer that you're going to miss out on because they weren't ready right this minute. So there's a gap.
And this is such an interesting part of the conversation, Buzz, because it's not like FC Dallas and the Hunt family are offering less money for USL 1 contracts than other USL 1 teams. I mean, they're pretty much on par with everybody else. And so I have to assume at some point when they were structuring or planning all this out that they knew this going into it. So is the problem that they've just been more successful in growing a better tier of player than they realized at the time?
I think
does my question make sense?
Yeah, it's partially the quality of the player in the sense that they're producing more of this middle tier pro that are getting sniffs from middle European leagues and teams, and they're getting sniffs from other professional teams in the United States, like Jonathan Gomez. He signed with Louisville City. He's only 16 years old and signed with another pro team in the United States. So it's a combination of those two things, and I think they perhaps underestimated the attraction of the pro North Texas training environment, mixed in with the chances to go and train with FC Dallas some, and the promise that, or not even the real promise, the potential promise that contract becomes a homegrown contract. So there's been a failure to convince guys that connection exists, that the Pepe path is real, even though we all know it's not. That one wasn't. Carlos Avalos is the first player to go from North Texas to the first team, really, and that only happened because Jesse Gonzalez had his problem. So there's a
and
lack
then you've got and then you've got Thomas Roberts, who has played so few minutes on the senior level. You don't want to be him either,
right? He spends all of his time with North Texas, and Edwin Surreal is going to spend all his time with North Texas. But at least those two guys are making $100K. Whereas if you sign with North Texas directly, you get 20, right? It's like, dude, a college scholarship is worth 50 a year for 4 years. Why would I take 20
at the least? Right?
Yeah. I mean, I was being conservative on a cheap school. If it's Stanford, right? So it's like, here's a chance to join somebody else's U20 team in Europe where they actually pay you. Or in the case of Wilson, apparently, it's a first-team goalkeeper coach that's coming to look at him. He might get a legit pro offer that FC Dallas is not willing to give him. So you don't blame these kids. It's not on them. It's in the end, FC Dallas is going to have to figure out how much money are we losing by not signing these 5 kids, just this year alone, for example, versus what it would have cost us to give them all homegrown level contracts. It doesn't have to be a homegrown contract. It could have been homegrown pay.
Right.
Or it could have been homegrown, then you loan them, whatever it is.
They couldn't, but even if they were willing to pay $150,000, I'm just making a number up, $200,000 to make a round number, and they can't sign all these kids to $200,000 homegrown contracts. There's a limit to however many homegrown deals you can do, right? Or is it there's only so you can sign as many of those deals, you just can't put them on your MLS senior roster?
Yeah, the MLS senior roster is limited to 10 of those.
But you can sign 20 of them, but 10 of them just don't play on the senior team.
Well, and that 10 is already full on FC Dallas.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying there's no limit to the number of homegrowns you can sign. There's just a limit to how many of them you can apply to your MLS roster.
Right, because FC Dallas already carries more than that. They have guys on loan that are actually on their senior that have been signed to FC Dallas, and they're just out. So they could have signed all 5 guys to homegrown deals and just signed them all to North, and then loan them all to North Texas, or just give them a contract with North Texas with the same amount of money, because then they might have taken it. If you're going to, great, if you're going to give me 100, 200K, now we're talking. Now I'll pass up college, right? So, I don't blame the kids, and I also don't blame the Hunts for saying I don't want to run North Texas at a $2 million loss.
No. I mean, it's almost a no-win situation. In some ways, it kind of pulls the curtain back as to why it took them so long to turn that team on in the first place, because there's not a scenario you can really imagine where that thing does anything other than lose money.
Yeah, but that's the trick. Is like it's 90% amazing. We're getting all these amazing kids coming through North Texas, FC Dallas. They're going to help the national team, and we're getting these other kids that we're developing that are maybe going to go USL. Maybe one of them will pop up. There's just this one little gap. One little talent gap, the tier 2 talent gap that they're not firing on, and I don't necessarily have a solution right now. I'm excited for Seth Wilson. It just underlines this one little problem.
Is the solution that those kids are good enough that they get purchased by USL championship teams? Yeah,
and that's what Jonathan Gomez did. Jogo.
Right.
Yeah.
And the club, and they may not be multi-million-dollar deals. They may be deals for 6 figures or something, but it's a profit to FC Dallas.
Well, that's
and maybe
why
they sell them to Scandinavian countries or lower divisions in European countries.
That's why Arturo Rodriguez is at Real Salt Lake Monarchs, and that's why Breck Evans is in Austin Bold, and that's why they had a deal lined up to send Damus to, I think it was Finland team that fell apart at the last minute, and he chose to stay, basically. But they're trying to make those guys, they're trying to make North Texas a viable path to a pro career through other avenues than just FC Dallas. It's not there yet, and people aren't buying in 100%, and the money is still a problem. So, it'll take some time, but it's just, it's clear there's still a little bit of an issue in terms of that missed opportunity, let's call it, because it's possible these guys could become legit big-time pros and maybe be worth a lot of money eventually, relatively speaking, and they're missing them completely because they're going.
And maybe one or both of you know the answer to this, and I apologize if you said it already and I just missed it or wasn't paying attention. If and when North Texas starts back up at Globe Life Park in July, will they be allowed to do any fans in attendance per the governor's allowance for like 50% stadium, capacity, since they were never going to breach that or come close to it to begin with?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe USL's talking about having some amount of fans in stadiums. And, I don't think with the USL, I don't think anything's written in stone yet. They still haven't even announced the schedules yet. So don't take all of it with a grain of salt. So we'll see. But I think so. Yeah, I think fans is the plan.
I was going to say, if there's one big shift out of all of this that's taken place, is the odds of me going to a North Texas game at Globe Life Park were relatively low, and now I'm thinking I may go to one now. Yeah. So because it may be the only game in town for a period of time. So I guess we'll have to keep our eye on that. All right. Well, thank you to both of you, Danny in particular. Thank you for your time. Anything else you'd like to throw out there to the listenership of the pod?
Dan Hunt, Lucha Gonzalez. Would it be possible to borrow Paxton, Pomacor, and Reggie Cannon for a few games in Luton? That'd be great. Thanks.
Would that solve two positional problems for Luton Town?
Actually, throw in Ryan Holland's head as well. We need a left back like anything.
Oh yeah, he's the other person that went off today. Ryan Holland said that was the one. On Twitter.
He went on. Yeah. It was Jimmy, it was the trainer, and it was Ryan that went all. Yeah. Dan, help me out here. What is Luton's team's nickname? Do you guys have a nickname like the Mastiffs or Sailing Ships?
Hatters.
Or
the Hatters. I knew that one.
Hatters. Is that because you had a faberdashery or something going on in?
In the 18th and 19th century, Luton was the hat-making capital of the UK.
You guys
everybody was mad because they were all made with mercury, right?
Mad as a hatter, yeah.
No, it was actually all straw boaters. So the alternate nickname back in the day was the straw platters.
That's much better.
That is a lot better.
It's kind of the funny thing about American sports, how teams are just given these absolute random nicknames. Like the rugby team come into Dallas is called the Jackals, and I've never seen a fucking jackal in Dallas. And in Europe, it's what was the primary industry or something in a place.
Yeah.
Well, we used to be like that.
Makes sense.
Like the Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Which were now in Los Angeles.
Out of this story, Buzz, what I've gotten is a mental image that in some crook family home, there's a wall of really, really old tin black and white photos with a bunch of guys that somewhat look like Dan with all these crazy hats on.
Straw hats.
Not just straw. Yeah, all different kinds of hats, over generationally, right? And just like different guys that look a whole lot like Dan in different shapes and sizes, all with crazy effing hats on. That's what's going on in my head. I'm hoping next time you go home, you take a picture of
but that doesn't exist.
You say that, but I wonder if it's true.
But I will send you a picture that I'm pretty sure may end up being the cover if you really want to go with that joke.
Yeah, let's do it.
What, the pod photo?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're all about the bits.
Yeah, send it.
We love bits are fun, Dan. You know that. Bits are fun. All right. Well, thank you again, Dan. You're always a source of information and great humor, and I appreciate that about you, my friend.
You're welcome.
And Buzz, man, I hope you're doing okay. I know you were all revved up and ready to go for MLS's back, and now the wind's been taken out of your sails. So,
Yeah, I could have used some distraction, and I'm not going to get it as much as I liked, but, I'll still have some soccer to watch, and things are looking up for all my stuff I've hinted about is getting better, so we're good.
Why don't you do this? Why don't you list on individual pieces of paper all of the teams that are still in the tournament and do a blind draw, and that's the team you get to support, and you can cover them and write about them in the meantime.
I already picked. I'm going with Orlando for Poppy.
Good for you.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not going to write about them, but I'm going to watch their games and cheer for them because Oscar's a wonderful, wonderful man and a friend, and I'm going to cheer for him.
Yeah. And I also look forward to your game reviews of Nani. That's something I would now look forward to.
Yeah.
Interestingly,
he was
if you subscribe to the to the Patreon, maybe there'll be some Orlando City content. Who knows?
Nobody's paying me for that. I'm just picked a team to watch, and that seemed like a good one because Orlando and Poppy.
Yeah.
To keep me involved.
Well, hopefully Dom Dwyer doesn't kill somebody.
Oh my gosh, Dirty Dom.
I love that guy.
Yeah, that guy.
Proper
well,
player.
listen. All right. Well, did you say proper player?
Yeah.
He gets stuck in, I guess, or something.
I like Dom Dwyer. I would take him at FC Dallas in a heartbeat.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, really another terrible dismount on my part. My apologies. All right, Dan and Buzz, thank you so much. We will. I appreciate your time, and thank you, good FC Dallas Curious fan. We will speak to you next week, I suppose, on another edition of Third Degree, the podcast. Thomas Roberts.